good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being with us for this new masterclass. I would like to thank the French INSEAD Alumni Association for having us. I mean, it's been now several years. We're very happy to be hosted with INSEAD to continue these masterclasses on leadership in what we started calling the new normal, which seems to be always on transformation, as you just said, Claude. And thanks a lot, Claude, for your patience and enthusiasm to have us here. So I'm Marie Humblot-Ferrero. I'm a managing director at BCG. I work at the intersection of pharma and industrial companies and people. Together with my colleague Fanny, we support major transformations from the strategic thinking to the deployment of those transformations, combining more and more technological challenges, digital, but also, as you said, sustainability criteria, and obviously centered around people. We have been working on leadership research since now a few years and developed the concept of generative leadership for leaders to be able to cope with current challenges of today's world. So first of all, a warm welcome to Christopher Guerin. Thank you for being with us today. Christopher began his career with the Linde Group in the UK before moving to Alcatel Cable in 97, which then became Nexans around 2001. Within Nexans, he held various sales and marketing positions in France and Europe before becoming the CEO in 2018. Over the past 5 years, Christopher has led the group through a major strategic shift to reposition it on the world of sustainable electrification markets. This transformation, which is based on a new management model that he will share with us, called E3, combining economics, environment, and engagement, has enabled Nexans to place the climate issue at the heart of its strategy to foster growth through sobriety while significantly improving the company's profitability. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Marie.
Let me also introduce Fanny, even if lots of you know already Fanny. She's a 2001 INSEAD MBA. She's a partner and director at BCG. She has a long experience in people and leadership strategies. She's very passionate about leadership and generative leadership and how to combine the different constraints of this world to the benefit of the planet, of the people, and of the company, and leave the world a better place than how we found it. So if we go into the topic of today, which is really how to build a new model that combines performance, environment, and social challenges. It was not just about performance and the past era. It's really now, how do you combine everything? How do you manage? Also, we can even go to the geopolitical challenges and the resilience that is required for a company. Since a few years, we are living through crises, and the crises are not anymore sequential. Christopher will talk to us about that. It's the climate crisis, inflation, pandemic, geopolitical instability, resource scarcity management, social equity, just to name a few. And those crises are constantly there, and we have to cope with all of them. This is why we started with Fanny asking leaders about what was expected from them to cope with all these complex challenges, which is high stake. It's not minimal things that are happening to them. And we ask employees about what they would look for their leaders. And what they were looking for is actually to have leaders that would provide with them not just only the head and the strategic thinking, but also the heart and the hands. The heart providing some care, and the hands providing some resources and capacity, agility in the organization to cope with all of that. This is where the concept of generative leadership emerged, having generative leaders that strive to leave the world a better place than what they found it, that are trying to seize the opportunity in all the crises and constraints that they are facing to do better for all their stakeholders. Obviously, shareholders and performance is key, because you don't get to have a long term if you don't have a short term. But shareholders sit alongside of another set of stakeholders that generative leaders see as vital, which is also the employees, the customers, the planet. So Fanny, I will start with you. We've developed together this concept. Can you tell us a little more on why leaders and why do we believe leaders should focus on also generating resources for the planet, for people, for society, while delivering performance to the shareholders? And if you can share with us also examples of some organizations and what you see.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Hi, everyone. So it's true that every enterprise now is finding that their space for business as usual is increasingly constrained by the planet's environmental limits, by the broader social and economic needs, and by rising stakeholder demands to rethink their role, both in society, but also to improve their impact on people and the planet. And just to add to that, the pressure keeps increasing. To name a few, climate hazards intensify. I'm sure everybody is now well aware of that. The economic and financial cost of adverse health impacts from climate change gain attention. We had a masterclass on that previously. Reporting on material sustainability issues in the value chain, CSRD in particular, creates greater transparency, but also constraints. There are some global treaties regularly in discussion in for example, the one on plastic pollution, that continue to pile up to regulate in a way and to provide some framework to deal with some of these adaptation challenges driven by the climate change. In addition to those factors, so the traditional factors defining competition, so the business as usual aspect, company strategies now need to explicitly confront the socio-environmental externalities of their operation. So going back to your question, so we observe how many companies adapt to that or adjust to those constraints. And in recent years, it's true that businesses have invested in significant initiatives to demonstrate their commitment to creating environmental and social benefits and societal benefits, or at least to mitigate their harmful practices. If we look at, if we try to group what companies are doing in that, we would say that many are still in early stages and see sustainability as compliance rather than as a competitive advantage. A second group of companies would be falling into a group where they have developed sustainability initiatives that aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that aim at improving general quality of life, reduce the vulnerability to disease, lift people out of poverty, to give some examples. But when we talk to the executives of those companies, what they share is that they realize that these efforts remain fragmented and they don't necessarily have scale and impact. And they also tend to be disconnected to underlying drivers of business value. And that the main challenges, and then that it would be interesting to have the perspective of Christopher there, is how to integrate that into the core business. But if we want to be hopeful, there is a third group of leading companies which are fundamentally reimagining their businesses to turn sustainability into a core competitive advantage. And I would say that in the recent studies that we've done, of 100 cases, about 30% of the companies that we observed were falling into that bucket. What do they do differently? They transform with being driven by a clear sense of purpose. They develop comprehensive solutions. They use advanced technology to drive those agenda forward. They build cross-industry partnership. And they also rethink the way they define value creation holistically along all of the wheel of stakeholders that you have as an organization. The shareholder is a very important one, as you said at the beginning, but they're also looking at many other stakeholders, and they articulate the values that they deliver for them very explicitly and moving certain needles. So not naming too many examples, because there are hopefully and fortunately a lot of organizations engaged in that direction. We'll talk about the challenges later, but to give a couple of examples, I would name companies which are closer to home. So I would name Schneider Electric, which is driven by a vision to be a leader in sustainability. And the company has reimagined its business model over time, and they have moved from being a French-based traditional electric installation player to becoming a truly global leader in digital sustainability solutions. I want to name also an example which is close to home, which is Michelin, which announced last week two very bold decisions, the guarantee of a living wage and universal social protection floor for all their employees worldwide, and also the creation of an ambitious lifelong learning approach. So another categories of stakeholder there. What outcomes are they after to build, and that they build in their equity story? It's about gaining business advantage. It's about enhancing the brand and differentiating in the market. It's about shaping the business ecosystem, influencing industry norms and behaviors, and creating new markets. And in that way, reshaping the nature of competition. So hope, one caveat though, because you mentioned the triple bottom line approach. It's true that it's been there for some time. It's not easy to achieve, but it's a good framework. And for those companies who have embarked and who are part of those 30%, we see that they are going and they are using that approach in how they define and they measure their performance.
Thank you, Fanny, for this lens and already some examples of company. Moving now to Nexans, Christopher, you imagine an approach actually to outperform and try to combine all these different constraints that you describe, and we were preparing for that session as opportunities. In the method that you have developed to survive through this perma crisis, and for which you also published a book. So can you tell us a little more about Nexans, what it means to his 30,000 employee, and how this concept of generative leadership also resonates with you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Fanny. In the elevator pitch version, Nexans has started in 1872 to support the pioneers of electricity, namely Edison, Tesla, Westinghouse, Benjamin Franklin, that were the pioneer of electricity that required at that time cable to convey electricity. And we started at this moment with those pioneers, and we participate with the first electrical revolution between 1890 to 1910. Was the first electrical grid deployment, and of course the reconstruction of Europe between 1950 and 1970. So all our, I would say, legacy, it's all about electrification. But when we study in depth our history, combining with the electricity evolution, we say we need as well to repair something, because we participate to the electrification of fossil fuel platform. And I'll say, of course, we know that now we are entering the third wave of the electrical revolution that has started in 2020, and that will be for the next 20 to 30 years. That requires for us a lot of cables from the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy, the renewal of the grid, or either, of course, the electrification of our daily life with electrical vehicles, for example. But we say we have as well a consciousness of reparations, means we are not serving the petrol industry anymore. and we shift a lot of our capacity into a pure sustainable electrification matter. So that's Nexans. It's a 8 billion euro company, 30,000 employees, as you mentioned, Mary. But these fantastic historical companies suffer big time when I've been nominated CEO in 2018, and a share price that had been divided by 3. We've lost all our tier 1 investors, a double profit warning in 2018, in spite of important growth. And we were a kind of loss of translation because I've been nominated the 3rd CEO after 9 years in a race of 9 years. So 3 CEO in 9 years. So there was an urgency of transforming the company. But all the topic that we had at that time, and I will share some slide to convey my message, because I'm very visual and I think it will be good for you to follow as well, is that we say it's not only a question of being good financially, we need to repair the company on these aspects, but how can we make sure that everything we do on the profit improvement is not detrimental to the environment or neither to the social aspect? So what we started with the team is we had a kind of helicopter view, because too easy to say that we need to transform. So we say, the world is changing, so it's the end of the world, but it's not the end of the world. And when you look at it, first of all, the big difficulties that management of today needs to face is the fact that we entered in what I call a perma-crisis world. There was all this crisis, all the history of our planets, but now we have a lot of black swans coming up, and we have a sanitary crisis. We face already a sanitary crisis. We are facing every day a climate crisis. We have economical crisis. We have social crisis. We have risk of cyber attack. We have the problem of the debt of the country. So the crises are not in sequence anymore like it was in the past. Sorry, they are piling up at the same time. And I bring them with a French philosopher, which is very, very close to the Chinese mindset, a different angle of perspective. His name of this philosopher is François Julien. He wrote a book called The Silent Transformation, Transformation silencieuse en français. Though this book is both in English and in French. A very, very tiny book, but very, very condensed in good perspective for us. Because he said, there is 2 ways to face the world today. I would say there is the European and American view or way of thinking, and there you have the Chinese mindset, which is very, very different and potentially better adapt to what we are facing right now. In Europe and in US, we are very supported by model. We like to modelize the principle. We like to think objective on actions and result through a budget. But it's more an inside-out view. We are thinking the company, and we try to project the company on the medium term. But the projection is supported with a world which is supposedly linear and predictable, which is not true at all. The Chinese mindset is a bit different because they have more an outside-in view of looking their business. First, they start by the external environment. They have a deep analysis of their environment on the long-term perspective, 10 years, because we all have that in mind. In general, we are not wrong on the long term. We are wrong on the short term. And they address the potential of the situation, or what is, it's like the Go game, the Goban that they use, the favorite game in Asia in general. And of course, this paradigm that you know very well, which is, you say, don't waste a good crisis, because a crisis, is a way to potentially shift your model on an opportunity for change. And I will tell you exactly how we turn COVID in a very positive aspects for the business model of Nexans. And in their view, they say, on the short term, as you cannot predict what happened, because your short term will made of many crises that you cannot predict, because we are in a VUCA world. So you need to be more intuitive. You should be more rational on the long term and more intuitive on the short term to adapt to an unpredictable world. So this is when we discuss with, with different managers inside Nexans, of course, outside Nexans, we say, we have a big problem because we are facing every day as manager paradoxal injunctions. Sometimes we talk volume, sometimes we talk value, sometimes we talk profit, sometimes we talk about environment, sometimes we talk about growth, sometimes austerity, productivity, social impact, infinite resources. Oh, we have a problem of access of resources, blah, blah, blah. So, every year, managers from their top management or from politics or from media, they're facing paradoxal injunction every day. In parallel to that, we are in a permanent crisis world, like I mentioned. And the difficulties we have is that we've lost the logic of being systemic, thing with the global picture lens. And for the last 20 years, companies have loved to slice things by functions, by market, and we are trying to find a kind of local optimum, but we don't understand that focusing on local optima is detrimental to the global optima. So we have an obsession of measurement. We have tons of indicators. If I give you from the European perspective, the ESG, I'm a pro regulation, but be careful. We will not save the planet through indicators. And the multiplication of indicators is just increasing complexity on a world which is very, very complex. So that's I'm going straight to the model. It's like we didn't want to invent a model ourselves, to be honest. I wanted in COVID time, I wanted a model that can apply immediately thanks to training to the management of the company. So in 2019 and 20, we've called my friends from INSEAD to check all their available executive education courses that we can take. We call Harvard, we call IMD, we call Columbia, we call Stanford, many universities, we call HSC. Of course, we found, because I've been there as well in INSEAD, we found fantastic trainings for the financial, fantastic training on sustainability, great training on social, but we have not found yet on the, excuse me, if it's existing somewhere, but we have not found yet a training that address the three topics in the same time with the same power and with a right method. So we read at that time 40 books about sustainable finance, sustainability in general, triple bottom line, and it's great books. But we say they are not actionable. It's a kind of philosophy on consciousness, which is fundamental. It starts by that, but it's not sufficient. So we say, well, we have a problem. We need to find a way. So what we did is, first, we analyze the units. We have 70 production units in the world. We have analyzed individually each individual unit, and we started by the one that are economically speaking running very well for years. What we name them profit drivers, and we check their environmental results. Luck or not luck, we found that those units that are standing very well, economically speaking, are running very, very well in terms of recycling of their waste, bringing eco-design product, starting circular exchange with customers, and with a carbon footprint keep reducing every year. When we go to the social aspect, we found that diversity inclusion is 10 points above Nexans, learning budget is 30% above Nexans, absenteeism ratio short term is less than 3%, and very, very few accidents in their unit. luck or not luck. So we took the other one, the opposite, what we call, economically speaking, the value burners, the ones that are running in the big red zone in terms of finance, burning cash every day, where we have, of course, management act on them very, very fast. But we check first their environmental indicators. Nowhere. Nothing regarding recycling, circular economy, they just know the words. When we talk about eco-design product, they believe that eco was for economy, not for ecology. And when we go to social aspect, nowhere. Diversity, very, very, very low. Learning, budget for learning have been, most of them canceled, stopped, on a very high level of safety, accident issues in their unit. And I don't talk about carbon footprint. We have 10 units in the world that were generating 40% of our GHG emission. So at the end, I think by our own statistics, we understood that it's not a matter of capex, of investments. It's a fact that we have some manager by nature or by intuition have a very, very strong, I would say, consciousness on being good on the 3 pillars. And some other are not at all conscious that you need to be financially right and as well going good for the people and for the planet. But let me start first to give you how it started, because I think we are not many companies that in the last 5 years have removed 80% of their customer base in less than 5 months. And we have been strongly helped for our environmental, I will say, result by what I will show you now. So give you some, because I'm very passionate about that, and I will make it quick, but I think we've lost something in the financial model recently. You know, there is 3 main industrial age. The pre-industrial age, where everything was from beginning 20s to 70s, individual productivity driven by improvement of variable costs. So we are in the era of Charlie Chaplin with modern times. Need more. And after came the 70s with the scalability, economies of scale, where you all have this sentence from top management, you say, we need more volume to cover our fixed cost. That was the industrial age. And which is a very stupid comment by nature, because fixed costs I never fix when you inflate your volume. But what happened is that for the last 10 to 15 years, we've shifted to post-industrial age. And the 2 costs that each company follow every day, variable costs and fixed costs, are for me obsolete. They're not obsolete by nature, because you need to have a look on it. But there is a third element that nobody is really analyzing. It's what we call the complexity cost. And to make an example a bit more easier for my team to understand, I took the example of iPhone. I say my team, you know, iPhone is, since every year is now changing a new generation. And of course, when you say that, when you hear that Apple will launch iPhone 15 and will stop the production of iPhone 13 and 14, we can say, of course, it's because of the marketing aspect. They want to raise the price and so on. But I take it in an industrial aspect, is that when you launch a new product family and you stop the other ones, your complexity index remains the same. You are not piling up different models at the same time on your chains, industrial chains. And that's a bit the problem that we've seen in different industries. It works as well for services, but in capital goods, the number of SKUs of product manufactured in the last 15 years have increased by 300%. So complexity keep growing, inflating every year. So what is the complexity? I would say that for us, it was the number of customers served multiplied by number of product manufactured, multiplied by number of process used, multiplied by the number of geography that you address. More your combination is high, more you are losing profit, big time. But you don't know it because on the accounting way, you cannot see them. And this is all the work that we did in Nexans is to make the invisible visible. And during COVID time, in 2020, we were doing that in a sequence. We say, now take the opportunity of in brackets of the COVID to accelerate everything that we aim to do in the next 5 years. So it's a method that I've built 10 years ago, but it's coming from the benchmark of the insurance sectors and the banking sectors that are profiling their customer one by one. We did the same. To reach 8 billion euro revenue in Nexans in 2019, we had to supply product to 17,000 customers. 17,000 customers. Just before COVID, we have profiled each individual customers on 35 criteria. It's not a question of Pareto law, removing the small one versus the big one. It's 35 criteria. Some on the strategic aspect, is these customers good for our future? Some on the risk aspect, some on the financial aspect. On the fourth criteria were on the environmental aspect. In March 2020, we explained our team the following. The world is entering in a sanitary crisis. Sanitary crisis will generate a revenue crisis. A revenue crisis will generate a margin crisis. Margin crisis will generate a cash crisis. And if you are with no cash available, it's a social crisis. Do you want to manage a social crisis? Of course, the answer is no. So take care of cash only from the economical perspective. And we say, we will keep only the customer, we will serve only the customer that are scoring very, very high on the 4 pillars that we will call platinum customers. And those 4 platinum customers represent only 4,000 customers overall. So in 5 months, in less than 5 months, we removed 13,000 customers all over the planet, everywhere in the world. And we remove as well more than, it's not 30, but we are close to 45% of the SKU manufactured. Impact on the revenue, of course, was minus 15% during COVID time. But nobody cares, we are a listed company. Nobody cares in COVID time that our revenue were at minus 15%. But we removed the bad fat. And we are reallocating since 2020 our capacity to good fat only, the good customer. And we've seen a striking improvement on our profitability. Just to tell you, right now we are at 700 million euro EBITDA. We were starting at 300, but before 2018, it was every year 300. The return on capital employed for the electrification part moved from 9%, we close to 30%. And cash conversion, we are generating a free cash of 300 million euro up to 500 million euro every year, which means in the last 5 years, we generated more free cash than in the last 15 years. But when you take the revenue of Nexans in 2022 on the one in 2019, in spite of all this shift of customers and product, it remained the same. When you take the fixed cost, it remained the same. So that's really helped us in ability to reduce complexity that have automatically generating a lot of profit on a lot of cash. Let me shift very fast on the environmental aspects, because you will understand that what we did on the economic have a big impact on the environment. And let me, to correct the origin of the quote. I'm French, and the origin of the quote is coming from Voltaire. Voltaire say, in an avalanche, each snowflake pleads not guilty. In French means, dans une avalanche, aucun flocon ne se sent responsable. And I say this is a big motto in Nexans. I say we are all a snowflake. We have all a kind of responsibility for the next generation or for the children. So we need to act as well strongly on the CO2 emission. So we did a bit the same. We try to understand the individual performance of on environmental aspect on some units versus others. But you have to take into considerations that some units, because of their location in the country, could have an unfavorable context. For example, in Morocco, they have no access to non-renewable energy. It's only fossil fuels. So they are in an unfavorable context. But in a nutshell, we are structure our GHG emission per unit, and we say, why should we allow, 20% of our revenue to keep growing because they are generating 36% of our GHG. So let's focus on those one right now. And what happened for those units? They receive only two kind of objective. The first one is profitability, because I'm a CEO on a listed company. So if we are not profitable, I will certainly not be there very, very long. So the first is about profitability. We are not talking about growth, only EBITDA, return capital employed, free cash flow. And the second objective that they receive is carbon footprint reduction. So the fact that they have these double constraints to improve profitability, but keep reducing the carbon footprint, force them to rethink their economical model and say which market, customers, and product fits best with these double constraints. And no one has any kind of objective on growth. No one. And that's really helped to steer a bit more the company in the right direction, because we have doubled our profitability. We have tripled almost the return on capital employed, but our GHG emission, we were supposed to do minus 17% since 2019, scope 1 and 2, and equivalent for scope 3. We are minus 38%. Minus 38. We are 3 years ahead of our plan. It's because of the economical model that I introduced. And that's really play a big role on that was the number that I mentioned was 2023. Here you can see that in 2022, we already make a lot of progress in terms of CO2 emission. Let's take on the maybe something that I've not concluded is we keep bridging the economical aspect with the environmental aspect. And we say to our team, guys, it's good to calculate the return on capital employed for each individual customer, but now to make sure that we are going on the right direction for both environmental and finance, we will calculate as well the return on carbon employed. Is this customer good for our CO2 emission reduction objective? And what we did as well, which is have a big, enormous impact in Nexans, is we have studied for the 70 units the revenue in a radius of 500 kilometers, below 800 kilometers. So how much of your revenue is made of local for local, bit extending from local at below 800 kilometers, how much of your revenue is beyond 800 kilometers. And for the one that have, for example, 10 or 15% of revenue beyond 800 kilometers, we say you have 1 year to shift from this 15% revenue spread above 800 kilometers to zero. If not, for all the kilometers above 800 kilometers, we will impose you an internal carbon tax of 200 euro per ton. That will impact virtually your P&L. And really always put more constraints on the management, on the fact you need to rethink your model to make sure that it's good for profit, but as well it's good for CO2 emissions. A word on engagement. Here, a lot of things to do, a lot, and we are only. I'm sharing an experience. We are not. I cannot say that we are solving all the issues, but on the engagements, we still have a lot to do. First of all, I could not find really the trick between environment, economic, and social. So, as my HR were a bit lagging behind on that topic, always bringing the same logic. You need a raison d'être, you need your values, you need your strategies, blah blah blah. That all the company knows. They say it was missing something, because what we're facing with the management committee is that 60% of our population are blue collar, working on shop floor. So, when they listen, the radio, the TV talking about home office, for them, home office is pure abstraction, because every day they have to go to the machine on the shop floor. So, as I couldn't find a way with HR, I'm working now with 10 sociologists, specific sociologists in that matter, that we have sent to our unit. We started by France because our engagement level is very low. And I remember this unit manager in France telling me, he said, it's normal, Chris, it's France, they're always complaining, blah, blah, blah. And on Colombia, our plant in Colombia is reaching a really high record of engagement. And I said to this French guy, but maybe let me show you what they do in Colombia. It's a simple thing. When you enter in our big unit with 1,000 people in Colombia, you have different dashboard with your name on it, name as employee. And every morning, there is an habit to say, you take a smiley, green, yellow, red, and you position the smiley on your name. And what the HR is doing in Colombia is that at 9 o'clock every morning, they are noticing the one that put a red smiley. And they go to them. What can I do for you? What's happening? Tell me. And I show this example to my French colleague. He say, you don't do that in France. It's not a cultural aspect. It's good, just good management. But I didn't want to force things. So sociologists came back and they say, we have interviewed more than 400 blue collar in Nexans. And they told me, Chris, you have a problem. You have a problem. And only start with you. Great. I love it. It's all about strategy. It's all about strategy, because you need to understand that to make it understandable, you need to have some reference. To understand the strategy, you need to understand the concept of what is a strategy. Blue collar have never been trained on such concepts, so they don't understand. The second aspect, you say, so it's not rooted. It's not rooted. Means the word of a worker in our unit. It's my factory, my team, my machine, myself. And strategy don't talk about that. So they say it's not rooted to the shop floor. So it's full abstraction. And the third element to say is not personal. You can talk about strategy, but I'm following orders. I need to bring this cable on the machine. This is my notice for the day, what I need to do. When you talk about strategy, what do you want me to do? And as strategy is very full of abstraction, they don't get it because they don't know what is their role. And that's as well the problem that they told me is that, Chris, the big problem of companies, not only Nexans, is that the narrative of your strategy, of your values, of your raison d'être are written think by white collar for white collar. So you need to change the way of thinking, because white collar, they love projection. The habitus of a shop floor, or people working on the shop floor, it's to think about my environment, my factory in my city, because every day at the supermarket, I'm meeting my colleagues. So what is the impact of my company, in the territory? The second is, it's my method, my know-how. How can I transmit my know-how? How can you project my machines or my industrial footprint or what is concerning me every day on the long term? You can express better your strategy if you start by the shop floor, explaining what will be the evolution of each individual unit. And this is all the work I'm ending there, because it's a very, very long journey. This is all the work that we are doing with sociologists to rethink the strategy from the shop floor views. And we see as well something that I love, that let me share, that, it's good to do annual survey or organic engagement, and we won a lot of points in the last years, and just in France, because of the sociologists exercise, we won just 10 points in a year. But there is an indicator that I'm following regularly, is the short-term absenteeism curve, a running quarter. I love the factory one. It's an example in France where endemically we had these factories with more than 10% of absenteeism ratio. One day we changed the plant manager, changed the team locally, and you can see in few quarters moved from 10 to 2%. Say, what happened? What happened? And we go to another example, factory 3. We are in Germany. This factory 3 absenteeism ratio were at 8% for years. The plant manager of that factory has been transferred to the factory 2. He's leaving a factory with an absenteeism ratio of 8%. He's moving to another one, which is at 3%. This guy is fantastic. In less than a few quarters, he has doubled the absenteeism ratio. So you have a good example and you have a bad example. So there is a guy that told me, so you remove the guy? No, we keep him. Because we would like, it's like a virus, we would like to see how he's evolving in the long term. Joke apart, we understood that, at least, that from the good part of the model or the example, what the team did in this factory where the absenteeism ratio slashed to 3%, they bring the vision to the factory. They translate the strategy of the company into local strategy. Every semester, they invite the customer in the factory. They stop the factories and they let the customer talk to our employees. Safety, of course, as well. Employee forum, fixing issues, fixing the stone in the shoes, showers that are not working, doors that are not closing, little things that polluting every day the life of our workers. Big topic on social dialogue. Myself, I'm putting 400 hours on social dialogue with union partners per year, and of course, great work in reconnection. Just to tell you, in 2016, we used to have a kind of farewell party for the managers that were leaving, even if the guys or the women were there for 4 years. And I've noticed that for a worker that was there for 40 years, they were not celebrating anything. They say, thanks for your work, goodbye. I say, that's unacceptable. These little things every day that we change. So, conclusion, now we are scoring each our individual unit on the E3 model. And the aim is to bring all the units to be compatible E3. Like, for example, Nexans Sweden. So every year we score them and we say you are E3 compatible, and we have only 5 units upon 70 right now, so still a lot of work. Or either you are E2, mean you're maybe good on social aspect, on financial aspect, but not good on environmental. So we steer the incentive system on the cycle where not good. You have some that are only E1. So here, a lot of work we will support. And you have 4 units in Nexans that are E0. Those ones are report to me directly because E0 means you have a big problem of management. It's just impossible. So this is the logic that, and this is my conclusive slide. We try to, by reducing the number of indicators, by bringing a more systemic views of the model, by working from the base, not from the top. We want to steer the company in the right direction, but in a very balanced way between the financial, the environmental, and the engagement. It does not replace the ESG, it does not save the planet. It's a model in a model for a company, and we are training with our own means all our managers on that direction. It's a lot of work. I think the good news is that natural resources abundance is ending. Companies will have to work in a scarcity world, and constraints is a good thing, because the fact that we will be constrained in growth means that we need to rethink the model. And that's the little contribution on the share of experience of Nexans. Of course, I wrote a book. It was an internal book that was supposed to be only for our employees, but because of I'm training some other small, medium-sized company on this concept, and of course you can buy this book, but this book is as well available in an English version, and you just need to ask us because you cannot find it easily. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for the details and the very specific examples on the E3 method. There is an interesting question in the chat, which is how equity investors, how the streets, how your shareholders are reacting to that.
Yeah.
Is it really the free cash flow? Do they really care about the environment and engagement? And how do you cope with this, and why do you still continue?
Yeah, it's because when you talk about that with family-owned companies, you find a lot of I would say connection. But in listed companies, it's very complex because investors are really focused on profit. And I knew that my lifetime as a CEO is linked to profit. I can do everything I want on social and environment, but if profit is not there, I'm over. But regarding your question, I think it was fundamental. In total, I'm meeting 700 investors per year. We are a mid cap. We are not Schneider Electric. We are not Michelin. Our market cap is 4 billion. If they don't see me, my share price is minus 10% very, very fast. It's like meeting customers every day. Where Peter Herbeck that doesn't need to meet his investor every day, that's Schneider Electric's a big size. So when you are a mid cap, you need to be much more present on the investor side. But to be honest, since COVID, the financial community shift more in the hedge funds perspective than long perspective of investors. So, and sometimes I had a meeting where I was very, very pissed off as a CEO, where everything was about profit. Even recently, I was in New York, and one of our great investors, I love him, but he said, Chris, recession is in front of us. So we love your ESG topic, blah, 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 in Europe. But now, back to basic, back to profit. Say shit. So that's maybe the world we will face in coming months if the economical perspective is worsening. But what I did is I've implemented the shift model to my investor. So we have scored 1,000 investors, and I'm meeting only the one that care about the equilibrium between economical and environmental and social perspective. If you are one investor, you invested in Nexans, you never talk about environment, you don't see me. You can see some of my colleagues, but you don't meet me. So we have our platinum investors, gold investors, you know, we extend our logic to even our investors community to make them compatible with our model.
And what's your trigger, Christopher? I think that you're pushing somehow the method quite far, right? To the customer, to the investor, to all the people you may meet. So you're convinced about that. What's your trigger point, your motivator?
Well, it starts from the fact that I'm doing a personal retreat every year. I started already 10 years ago. We started with Mathieu Ricard, the Buddhist monks that bring us 8 CEO together in the Alps and say for 5 days we stay with 5 days with him in a very, very frugal way. Mathieu, after the 5 o'clock morning meditation walk, starting the day, what will be your legacy, guy? What will be your personal legacy for the society? Big S and small s. What will you do for the planet and what will you do for your company? And even if you are not there in the next 10 years, what can you launch right now that will position your company in the right way? A second retreat that was very important for me was Pierre Rabhi. Oh, sorry, it's a French example, but it's a agriculture philosopher on the topic of austerity. He say, why do you need growth all the time? Can you find a way to be more humble, making sure that you are consuming less natural resources? We have many retreats. Another one on, and that's the last one I would give you an example, was coming from a movie maker, which is very, very radical in the ecology. And he invited us in a monastery for 4 days. And he said, you know, guys, I will be happy to spend 4 days with you, but by definition, you are CEO, so you are big greenwasher. Good communicator, good greenwasher. So I will tell you a lot of things about ecology, but unfortunately, you will say, yes, Cyril, that's great, but I'm not sure it will anchor the change. So we are changing the rules of the game. I ask you, CEO, to come with one of your child from 12 to 18 years old, or nephew, niece. And we ask your child to come 2 days before you arrive. And it's your child that will challenge you on the legacy of your work for the planet. And I remember this moment where, of course, I sent my daughter of 16 years old. She's still very, very upset because, you know, it's a very, very old monastery, very, very cold, you know, very, very strange atmosphere. But when it's your daughter that challenge your dad, what kind of planet will you live in coming 10 to 15 years? What is it for me? You know, the fact that it's your child, it's anchoring in your mind. So that's what reinforced my backbone, because living in the vortex of a listed company where profit comes first every day, it's you need to have very, very strong conviction to keep them, and as well to bring it to your team. So that's what drives me.
Thank you for sharing that, Christopher, with us. I'm turning now to you, Fanny, because you support lots of clients on this journey of change. What are the common struggles you see in these clients, and how you can foster some of the changes?
Yeah, thanks, Marie, and thanks, Christopher. Very inspiring I think the observation again is that, and you hinted on many of the things, and you already touched on many of those challenges. So let's call it sustainability-driven transformation, right? They have a unique set of challenge. I've been doing change management, as Marie introduced, for many years, and they have very long-term goals. But at the same time, as you said, to use the word vortex, we live in a vortex of short-term profitability focus. So that's a first challenge. Related to that, we see some clients struggling with, and we work a lot on the climate and sustainability, as some of you may know, and we support many clients on that journey. There's a struggle on redefining value. So what value are we going to deliver to whom with such a transformation? I like the point that you're making on resource constraints. And again, I'm drawing from our experience as consultant, where we have studied regularly the difference between complexity of the world and complicatedness internally. And we see that there's a big disconnect. So the complexity grows to a certain degree, whatever the degree, but then the complicatedness of organization goes by 30, 40 times more. So what we say in regards to complexity and simplification is that when you remove resource, then you force the system to shift. So I like the point you're making, and I think this is going to be actually quite an enabler for many organizations, because, as you said, resources are not. We have reached planetary boundaries. We have exceeded planetary boundaries. If you look at the people expectations, talent expectation, and preferences, there is some realignment to do, and I'm not even going into the geopolitical context that we all face, which is also creating a lot of constraints in terms of resource. So I think that will help the redefining of the value we're creating along the richness of the stakeholder groups, which is one of the first, I would say, difficulty on those to embark on those journeys. Attached to that, it's the business case, but it's also the case for change. So a company is made of many different people with many different perception and preferences. So we, as individuals, we all have different perception of the urgency to change in relation to climate and sustainability. And it is a driver of complexity for the top leadership to drive those transformation, because at the end of the day, you need, as you were saying, you need people to come along with you, because you need them to experiment with you new ways of doing things to achieve the objectives and the challenge. But not everybody will be drawn in the same manner. And you need to cover for a multiplicity of needs to bring people along with you. But at the same time, as you said, Christopher, in relation to the value redefinition, you need to be crystal clear on the areas of values that you are going to focus on step by step and sequencing them. And that maybe sometimes will attract some of your people, but not necessarily the rest of the organization. And maybe the last point I want to point on those transformation is that they are actually quite technical as well, because particularly in relation to climate change and biodiversity, there are some technical solutions. So there is a need to, and also digital and AI are going to enable and to facilitate some aspect of these transformations. So there is a need to upskill and reskill and bring learning and development at scale in the organization for people, for the leadership to drive them, but also for the teams to continue to be successful in this environment. I'm going to stop there. Thank you. And go back to you, Marie and Christopher.
Thank you, Fanny. I wanted to continue along the lines on how to embark companies. And And Christopher, you mentioned that family-owned business usually they can live in the longer term. They have some decision-making processes of their own. They still would have to take advice from outside or from the street. But at the end of the day, they have a flexibility in terms of how they want to drive the company that is much higher than listed companies. But you're a listed companies, and you've proven, I hope for the whole crew that is here, that you can make it change, right? So what can we learn from you, maybe on how you embarked your management team, because you're not doing that on your own. You have your leadership team, your management team to follow down that path as well. What are the key things that we can take out of your experience?
Well, I would say it's first of all a question of consciousness. So what I did with my team is that I did a kind of a cycle of retreat. The first one a few years ago, I bring my executive team in the desert of Agafé, very roots, frugal way where your meeting room was a Bedouin tent, and I say no computer, no phone. And we will the first cycle was called Terra Incognita. So let's get to know better each other personally, by roots, your values, and we will do the strategy by working together. Group of two, working 4 days like that. The second retreat was in the mountains of Norway, where we had dogs. How would you say dog sliding? Chien traîneau, dog sliding. We went and in the snow, and we say the main question is: after 1 year, are we at the right altitude? And the right speed. The third cycle, I bring the team in the monastery, where we say let's take the time it's nothing religious. It's just a kind of time to be in the silent mode. We experience a dinner without talking at all with monk, and it was fantastic. He said, I just want you to be aligned, because we are not doing physical work. We are mental work. On everything you see every day, it's a kind of in your brain is a kind of jacuzzi. So sometimes you need to stop your jacuzzi and to see what's in it, really. And the fourth cycle that we just did recently, because now we are restarting the cycle. We are the sponsor of Vendée Globe, a skipper, and we went on his boat on not 4 days, because it was a bit difficult, but he say, are we in the right direction? This was our 10 years horizon. Are we aligned with the horizon? So, I've done this philosophical cycle with my management team, because if it's a one-man show, it does not work. And but we did a lot of things as well with blue collars and with union partners, to have a kind of squeeze effect from top management to the base, and that really helped.
That is really super interesting and inspiring to see how you work at the different levels of the organization, from the executive committee to listening in to the different workers. I like this comment on the chat of one of the participants that was saying it's encouraging to see how French industry is transforming today difficult economical environment. As you said, we are known in France to probably struggle with complexity or social changes. So I hope you provided inspiration for all the people in this call and some hope. Fanny, I believe you used that word, some hope that things can change. We can still be performant financially performing while embarking with the whole company in the right direction from a social and from an environmental perspective. So thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you very much, Fanny. Thanks all for participating in this masterclass. We're going to share the different elements online as usual. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And just a last word from me. Do not forget that we are all individually a snowflake. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice rest of the day. Bye-bye.